Here we are again to talk about aviation. The weeks go by pretty quick, and Martin, you've been in Hong Kong.
Indeed, I have.
How was that?
Hot, humid, lots of spitting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the aircraft spotting action like?
Of course, Hong Kong, great. Flew up on the Air New Zealand 777-200, which was fine. Coming into Hong Kong, the time of morning we did, the airport appeared to be quite empty, but there was a massive cluster of 747 freighters, which was good to see. Of course, Hong Kong being a major hub for the Americans, shipping stuff in and out of China. So that was very nice to see. Atlas and Polar Air Cargo and all those companies. A couple of MD-11s or MD-10s set up. 777 freighters. It was really good. And then when I left late in the afternoon, chocker with A330s. Absolutely.
It's sort of A330 heaven, Hong Kong, in a way,
pretty much. Especially in the evening when all the regionals are coming and going, it was basically wall-to-wall A330s. Of note, there was a Lufthansa A340-600. There were a couple of Chinese A340-300s. There was an SAA A340 there, and of course there was the Finnair A350.
Oh, you got to see it in person?
I did, yes, and I watched it rocket off the end of the runway as well on its way back to Helsinki.
On film and in pictures, they don't look, I'm picking, as big as they actually are. They're quite big, aren't they?
Oh, when you get there, it's all wing, eh? That wing just stretches on forever.
Okay, and also, because you've been in Hong Kong, our feature aircraft of the day, of the week, of the month, whatever you call it, it's by Boeing. It's not an aircraft, though.
Well, it flies, but it's by Boeing. But no, it's not an aeroplane.
Yeah.
It's a jet foil.
And we're going to have more about that a bit later on.
Yeah.
Also, something that's coming up, Martin, not necessarily, in fact, not in this episode, but shortly on the SITV channel, we'll have a few little bits of footage here as I describe it for the YouTube watchers. And that is, I've been into the archive. I've delved deep into my massive collection of mini DV tapes.
Yeah.
And I came across some tapes that I'd pretty well forgotten I'd filmed back in 2002, and it captures the final flight of the 737-200 in Air New Zealand colours. I was on the final flight. We set up cameras in the cockpit, and for those watching YouTube now, you can see some of the shots. And I've put it all together. I'm going to put an edited program of it up sometime in the next few weeks.
That'll be good.
I mean, if I do say so myself, it was a good effort. I remember now it was done at very short notice, just a few days, and Air New Zealand sort of cooperated. But I'm glad I did it. It's a sort of history in the making, and it's just been sitting in a box for, 14 years?
Just sitting there.
Yeah. I was hoping the tape would play all right. And they were fine.
Bit of history.
No HD.
Yeah.
That was pre-HD. These were shot on Canon cameras, the MV1, the XL1, and the MV100, I think.
Yeah, the footage looks great. Obviously I've seen it, and it's really nice.
And you've seen a few little clips there. I'm not giving away too much, but very soon we'll have that video up. Okay, let's get down to, first of all, and so much to talk about. Talking about local things, hot off the press, Air New Zealand pulling out of another domestic destination. Obviously, the concept of being the nation's air service provider, as the heart of it used to be, is sort of over.
Well, yeah, the concept of being the nation's provider was provide to the nation. So no, that's well and truly gone.
You'd think that you'd at least have a couple of destinations that aren't profitable, but because you're operating in Air New Zealand, you're the flag carrier, you've got the history, and most of what you do is profitable. You'd think you'd be able to sort of accommodate it slightly, right?
Well, while they might have not been profitable with 19-seaters, they're assuredly not profitable with 50-seaters, and that's what's happening now, isn't it? They got rid of the small planes, so they're just going to get rid of destinations.
Well, it's interesting. The market comes in, fills the gap. Air Chathams have come in and said from the 31st of July, which is the last service, they'll be in there with a 19-seater Metro liner, Metro 3.
Swearing a Metro.
Well,
swearing
that's like
in
a
Metro.
Blast from the past.
I wonder whether Air New Zealand, and there might be a number of reasons why they can't do this, but why couldn't they put Pilatus PC-12s in some of these little routes?
They don't want to have to work at that end of the market. There's already operators doing that. And they would have known that there's an opportunity, an operator to come in. And I guess for the locals, fair enough. But, I mean, it's a bit of a tired old workhorse, the old Metro liner. I mean, your ears are going to be, your eardrums will be buzzing away for a few hours after you get to Auckland.
Not the quietest. But a great profile. It looks very sleek when you see it in the air.
It gets along, but it's hardly state of the art. I wonder where Ewan Wilson is with his Saab 340.
Yeah,
that would be a good one for that.
That would be a very good one for that. Yes.
Yeah.
So that's Wanganui to Auckland's being cancelled. Blenheim to Christchurch being cancelled,
Yep.
and then another one to the far north, right?
Yeah, they're talking about the far north one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're really shrinking it down to what makes a profit, obviously.
So if you want to fly to Blenheim from Christchurch, you're going to have to go Christchurch, Wellington, Blenheim.
Yeah. Okay.
Cost a few bob more.
Yeah, well, you could have a sausage roll. Let me wait.
I've just figured out something, Paul.
What's that?
Why Air New Zealand's pulled out of Wanganui.
Oh, not enough demand, man.
Yeah, not enough demand, because Jetstar's eating their lunch flying from Palmy.
Which is, what?
An hour's drive away.
Well, not even that.
Not even that, really.
Okay, by how much are they beating them on price out of Palmy, do you reckon? Probably half the price. Let's look it up sometime.
I've never checked, but I do know I know of people who have flown them.
And more on that. Sounds Air are coming in and filling the Christchurch Blenheim gap.
Yeah.
That'll be the old Pilatus PC-12,
I
won't
hope
it?
so. Yeah.
Boy, that'd get you there quick, wouldn't it?
Yeah, zip you over. Chop, chop.
Yeah, probably faster than the Q300
Oh,
when said and done.
it's probably the whole sector and everything, yeah.
Well, right in the ballpark, anyway.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that there are competitors who are coming and using really well-defined... You see, that aircraft's too small for a company like Air New Zealand to operate.
Yeah.
They don't do little things, you know?
No, big.
Yeah, big.
Yeah.
And, you need the little nimble companies.
You can't have a guy changing to a chef's uniform on a Pilatus. Poor guy. I feel sorry for him.
That's right. Well, your in-house chef.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
Remember, Paul, last program when we were talking about Virgin and who's going to buy Air New Zealand stake and all of this?
Yeah, you thought Chinese airlines would be in the picture somewhere.
Yeah, now while they haven't sold Air New Zealand stake, and that's actually looking increasingly unlikely that they'll sell it by the self-imposed deadline that Air New Zealand set of, I think, 30th of June. Anyway, that's a whole other story. It's just been announced that Hainan Group is going to take a 13% equity stake in Virgin. Their biggest airline is Hainan Airlines, which is that island. Looks a bit like Taiwan, but it's much further south. It's in the Gulf of Tonkin.
They've got Dreamliners.
They got 157 planes, so they've got pretty much a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and they own all sorts of airlines and banks, and it's a really, really big conglomerate. Well, they now have 157 million Aussie dollars worth of Virgin Air stock.
And how much does that buy them?
It's 13%.
13% of the company.
Mm.
They'll want to go more than that, won't they?
Quite
Because there
possibly.
are so many... How many shareholders are there?
Well, major shareholders is Air New Zealand,
yeah.
Etihad, Virgin, Hainan, Singapore Airlines. Have we forgotten any? That's 5 major
Well,
ones.
that's too many.
That's a lot, yeah.
And
that's
they're
a
all
lot.
airlines
Yes.
with their own needs and wants.
And agendas.
What happens?
Yes, it's going to be very interesting. But that's pretty big for Chinese access to the Australian market. So Hong Kong Airlines, which is part of the group, they're already flying from Hong Kong down to Cairns and I think possibly Brisbane. There's Hainan Airlines is apparently flying to Sydney, and there's now talk of Virgin flying their metal over to China.
Right. I wonder where Air New Zealand comes in. Is it a case of Hainan won't fly to Auckland or Christchurch or even Wellington, perhaps, if Air New Zealand gets all their traffic
Yeah, who knows?
from Australia into New Zealand via the Virgin network as well?
Well, once Air New Zealand sold its stake, I wonder what's going to happen to that semi-alliance that they've got.
Yeah. Will they sell their stake?
Well, they've said they will by the 30th of June.
Yeah.
Whether or not that happens, it's a whole other thing. And maybe this might change their thinking.
Ultimately, all those Chinese airlines are owned by the government,
Yes.
aren't they?
Everything's owned by the government. in
Yeah.
China.
So really, what you have to also remember as an instrument of obtaining foreign ownership
Yes.
at a sovereign level, more than just an airline business level,
Because that's fundamentally it.
you
The
can start
government-
to influence some control on the air services and some of the economy of a country.
Yes. Fundamentally, the Chinese government owns all the assets in China, whoever apparently owns them.
Yeah. They've got lots of airline companies, but in the end, it's all the orders are done through one agency,
In
aren't they?
fact, it all belongs to the Communist Party of China.
There you go. So you got to factor that in, think about that as you're selling stakes. I wonder if the AAACCCC or whatever they call themselves is going to be factoring that.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's quite a big story.
Yeah. So that values the company at just over $1 billion.
Yeah, if you work it out like that, yeah. Yeah.
Is that...
30 cents a share.
Well,
Got a
that's
lot-
only 3 777s.
Well, at the prices Boeing would like you to pay, yeah. Yeah, it is. Indeed.
Wow, okay.
Or 2.5 9Xs, 777 9Xs. I think their list price is 400
My
million.
point is, that doesn't seem like a massive value for a company that's flying hundreds of They've got over 100 planes, haven't they?
Yes, I think we have to know how many they own. If they're just leasing them, it's not really an asset, is it?
True.
But it's not much money for a very big Chinese conglomerate to get a lot of access into Australia.
Yeah. And from Australia to other places too, perhaps.
Yeah, well, to Wellington, of course.
Wellington?
If they put the runway in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hope there's no dodgy backroom deals keeping them out of Wellington if there's a runway extension without...
That's what it's all. I think that's what it's all about. I think it was this deal was...
it's all about that.
Stealth deal put in place by Air New Zealand to block the runway extension.
Shows you how obsessed they are.
It's another thing you heard here first.
With opposition to it.
Yeah.
And speaking of Air New Zealand, Mr. Luxon, looks like he's going to be moving on.
Well, no, they've strenuously denied that, Paul.
Oh, okay, but that usually means even more he's going to be moving on.
Yeah, pretty much. They've just confirmed it.
To Fonterra. I mean, is the skill base learnt at Unilever selling soap powder to the world and then airline management applicable to baby formula and milk powder and cheese?
I mean, it's possible that he's going back to what he knows, which is obviously powder.
All right, powdered goods.
Soap powder, milk powder.
It's an interesting question, though, isn't it? In your experience of business, mine is not very far beyond just the media business. But do you think you can actually have generic skills that could work in any market like that or any line of business? Or you must end up specialising somewhere.
Well, that's what modern management has tried to teach us, that you don't need to know anything about what you're doing because it's a business practice, an international best practice, and blah, blah, blah. But it is quite telling, particularly, well, not particularly in the airline business, but those airlines which appear to be most successful are run by airline guys, Emirates, British Airways.
Yeah.
The Americans have had a terrible run of it when they went to generic management.
Well, and that's the point I was thinking. This whole concept of generic management where you get people who know how to manage. Well, knowing how to manage is actually a limited range of skills, really, when you think about it.
Well, it's about reading a ledger and understanding accountancy.
In fact, if you turn up with generic management skills, in my view, you're worth less.
Yes. Yes.
Some people are natural at things. Particular areas,
I worked for a company in Germany which was a specialized engineering company, and it was great fun, and we did nice things.
Yeah.
And then we got taken over by a German multinational which ran the company using SAP and had this philosophy where managers got rotated every 2 or 3 years, regardless of what field they were in before. So I was running, or not running, God knows I wasn't running anything, but I was working in a division which made sorting equipment, and then they'd bring in a senior manager who previously had made electric motors.
Right, okay.
And a sorting machine and electric motor are very, very different beasts.
Well, one's a very small picture item, and the other is a very big picture item.
Yeah, and it got very less nice working for that company because everything came down to the numbers, and they had expectations, sales expectations and this type of thing, which just didn't match the product they were trying to sell, and the company went through quite a difficult period for a while.
Air New Zealand, though, do seem to be able to maintain or keep projecting that sort of organic Kiwi thing, despite the engine being brutally run in the back room.
Yes.
Yeah, anyway. So good luck to him. Do you think they'll employ him and suddenly the milk price will go up?
Well, it's been denied, Paul, so we can't go there.
Interesting story here, also involving Air New Zealand use of technology, and maybe this comes out of, two things, automation and robots, but also liability too at work. I mean, if you slide off the top of a fuselage of an airliner, it's a long way to fall down. Air New Zealand trialling the use of camera-carrying wall-climbing robots to inspect hard-to-reach surfaces on the aircraft. That's a smart idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Putting up a picture of it here on the YouTube, but they're like a little sort of, one of these little toy tank things. Obviously they grip on, and they'll have ultrasound or something that you can fire down and check the skin condition, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it is good. I mean, things will get checked that are now quite difficult to check and probably don't get checked.
The airline's Chief Operations Officer, Bruce Parton, says the robot can identify defects not immediately visible to the human eye. And a Christchurch-based company, Invert Robotics, has designed the technology, originally, here we go, for the dairy industry.
Another dairy industry connection. So
they're
buying robots from the dairy industry, and the CEO might be going to the dairy industry.
There's something going on here.
It's a connection. It's a connection.
Here's the big moment. Air New Zealand says it started using the robot after recognising the shape of a milk tank closely resembles an aircraft fuselage. Wow. That must have been a eureka moment. I would have liked to have been there for that. But good on them. like I say, I think health and safety at work in terms of management being personally liable now probably seals it, doesn't it? Because, I think normally I've seen them do that. They're all clipped up and on abseiling stuff.
No more wing walking.
No. Well, that might be more safe. It'd probably be up on the top of fuselage and up around,
tailplanes.
Yeah, long way off the ground.
Yeah.
So there's that. Martin, a lot of talk about Wellington Airport. We've talked a lot about the proposed runway extension and, the business case for it's been criticised and analysed, and depending on who you believe, it either is going to be a disaster or is going to be really good. But interesting to see Wellington Airport profit is up 29% on passenger growth. There were nearly 900,000 extra international passengers. Domestic passengers were at 4.3 million. There's been about, I think, in the double-figure growth in the last year. That must, again, bode well for the plans.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Because,
well, look what's happening.
Exactly. And if people could fly here direct, there'd probably be more of them.
160,000 extra seats from Jetstar, Fiji Airways and Qantas. 110,000 seats per year when Singapore Airlines comes in.
Yeah.
So the consent application has been lodged to extend the runway. They're looking for, just a quick reminder, 350 metres extra on there at a cost of $300 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can raise that. A couple of telethons.
It's a lot of money.
Lots of cake stalls in all the suburbs for a couple of centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, someone will stump up the money, I'm confident. But, that's good. Good to see that we're doing well. And obviously that increase in international traffic's got a lot to do with the tourism boom.
Yeah.
Wanaka and NASA, we don't hear much about that, but they're there most of the time. I think they want to make Wanaka a base for the balloon launches.
Permanent base.
The most recent... Yeah, permanent base. The most recent launch happened, only a week or two ago. Mm. That balloon inflates to the size, they say, of a sports stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gigantic.
Well, it's the size of a sports stadium, yeah.
But when it starts off, it looks so shrimpy.
Yeah, no, it's just, I've seen the diagrams. It gets really, really big and it's kind of flattened as well. It's not a pure sphere. It's wider than it is tall when it's up there and full of full of not very much by all accounts.
This thing's full of instruments. It's got quite a sort of an array on it. They're looking for gamma rays, which are created in some of the most extreme environments in space, such as exploding stars.
And they're over Wanaka, are they?
Well,
that's not particularly confidence-inspiring, is it?
Nice place to, safe place to launch it from on a good day.
Okay.
We're being part of that. And if they set up a permanent base there, that'll be great for the town.
It will be.
Yeah, sort of gives it a bit of a high-tech feel, a spaciness.
Yeah, no, that's great. And space capital of the South Island.
Speaking of space, we should have actually made mention a program or two ago of how SpaceX are doing with landing their rockets. This is a good time because they've just done their latest one. Wow. That's all I can say. The big wow.
It's just amazing, isn't it?
So this one is pretty well the most ambitious.
It was the fastest turnaround. So it was launching a Thai satellite up to geosynchronous orbit. It's very similar to the one before that, but apparently this one was even faster because the load was slightly heavier.
Right.
So
and that's 17,000 miles off the planet. That's a long way out.
17,500. Oh, yeah, 36,000 Ks. That's the orbit. Yeah. It launched and at about 100 or so kilometers up, and I think 6,500 kilometers an hour. The first and second stage separated, and the first stage, the main propulsion stage,
it comes back down.
Turned around and landed itself, and this time they had cameras on the stage so you could actually see what it was aiming for, and you could watch some of the maneuvering thrusters and the...
Yeah, they've got those little paddly things, and we're showing a bit of video now. Those paddle things, and you say that they're Russian developed.
Yeah, the Russians developed that for their high-speed air-to-air missiles. They look like sort of barbecue grates. Each one's an airfoil, and so and
most of the air goes through it, and you need to when you're going at those velocities.
And it means you can make them shorter and stubbier because they're doing enormous speeds. Yeah. I mean, this thing, as I said, it turned around, it was over 6,000 kilometers an hour. So the rocket turns itself around, starts its engine for about 10 seconds to slow itself down so that the re-entry heat doesn't melt the engines. And then,
because you want to use them again.
Yeah, and then once you get down quite low, it fires its rockets and lands. But the amazing thing about this is it can't dose the engines. The engines aren't really throttleable to any great degree. So what it's got to do, it's got to balance its thrust, slowing it down, to exactly the point where it stops on the barge, because if it gave too much thrust, it would take off again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, so
It's incredibly sort of subtle.
it's all about the timing, because as I said, these motors are not very throttleable. It's not like an electric motor where you could just take power on, take
You've
power
got to
off.
stay way ahead of the game.
Yeah, amazing. And it lands steady as on a
Solid as a
pitching
rock.
barge in the middle of the
You
ocean.
can see the pitching from the camera on the barge. It's like a couple of meters swell coming
Yeah,
through there or
it's
something.
just astounding. So this is the third one they've landed out of, I think, 5 attempts. And, that's saving him tens of millions every shot.
Yeah, compared to any competition that might exist. And we're even talking that every now and then he can offer a free flight or a cost flight.
Well, there has been some talk of that. So they haven't flown any of the refurbished ones yet. And so they're not 100% sure how many flights they can get out of them. But there will be a point where they say, well, the risk is outweighing any cost saving, so we won't put premium cargo on this one. But some people have been saying that Musk has suggested that, well, once we get to 7 or 8 flights and we don't want to use it anymore, we can basically give it away. So for cost, you can have it for cost. We'll refuel it, we'll set it up, we'll charge you for that. But you can actually have the launcher, and if it gets you up there, good on you.
Some sort of science project or
University
or even like a third world country that needs some comms help or something like that. Interesting. Okay.
Amazing. Talking about Musk and being in Hong Kong, the Tesla car of his,
Yeah.
it's the most popular four-door sedan on sale in Hong Kong at the moment. The car went on sale in late August, and they've sold nearly 6,000 of them.
Why am I not surprised?
They are everywhere. And it used to be when you went to Hong Kong, you saw lots of S-Class Mercs and 7 Series Beamers and that. You just don't see them anymore.
Oh, they're taking a hit, are they?
If I was a German luxury car executive, I'd be having sleepless nights about
they'd
now.
know. They'd have these sales figures. They'd know.
Well, they are all looking a bit tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do? Sort of in the same position as Boeing, and we'll talk about that in just a moment with their competitors. Keeping it space, though, what about this story there where there was a report by the crew of, what was it, a Turkish Airlines plane? It's reported in the Daily Mail that there was some sort of sighting of what they would call an unidentified flying object. It doesn't tell you anything more than it's not identified. Intimating that there might have been other traffic in the area that no one knew about that could have had some, effect or timing relationship to the disappearance of the Egypt Air 804 north of Egypt in the Mediterranean.
Yeah, this is an extraordinary story that, they were flying along on their way to Istanbul, and they saw a series of green lights go past them, they reckon 2,000-3,000 feet higher than them, heading in the general direction of the Mediterranean.
Wow. They claim they saw green lights pass by their jet above Istanbul as their plane approached Ataturk Airport from Bodrum. I don't know where that is. An hour later, the plane crashed 500 miles away. You'd have to think through pretty carefully, if you're a pilot and you saw that, whether it was something that you want to talk about publicly.
Yes, and you've also got to bear in mind that any unidentified object flying around in that part of the world is highly likely to be one of the many hundreds of CIA drones.
Well, this is what I'm thinking.
Floating around.
For a start, first of all, there's a bit of the woo-woo factor if you mention UFOs.
Yeah.
People might start to think, well, are you seeing things? We better check you further and, make sure you're fit to fly. But, that part of the world must be chocker full of flying machines right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are secret, of course.
Yeah.
I guess they've got their ways of keeping them out of the lanes of air traffic, but every now and then something will slip through.
Yeah. Though why it would have lights on, I'm not sure, but you never know.
Above Turkey, though, above Ataturk Airport in that vicinity, that's a controlled sort of terminal area.
Yeah, you think so.
And there's a lot of traffic in that part of the world.
Yes. Drones don't have transponders. But
But
Turkey...
it would be dangerous to put it into that part of
Oh, gosh, yes.
that sort of airspace.
And plus, Turkey has a lot of military radar as well, so you'd think if there's anything up there, they'd have seen it.
There is a question mark a bit over the official announcements from the likes of the Egypt air traffic control system, like Malaysia. They're actually all military run.
Yeah.
And, military are not known for disclosure,
Transparency.
especially if they've screwed up somewhere.
They have a secrecy culture.
Yeah, so, good luck on that.
Although, having these revelations about the 7th Fleet, I can now understand why they have a secrecy culture. It turns out they're all bent.
That's a worry, isn't it? It's another big story that's been breaking, basically just people on the take everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah.
Like from admirals down to, it's just amazing.
I wonder
Anyway,
how much of the military budget is actually being
Invested.
dissipated in that way.
Yeah.
Invested.
Yeah.
Don't know about that. All right, so it looks like it's going to be a real problem to find those black boxes as well, because basically, I didn't realize that the Mediterranean's quite deep. It has an average depth of nearly 5,000 feet. In the area that the aircraft disappeared, there's that Odyssey Trench, which goes down to 17,000
What?
feet.
In the Mediterranean?
In the Mediterranean.
Who knew?
I always thought it was like a shallow sea,
Like a shallow lake.
but it's not.
Wow.
So there is a difficulty there. Thinking about what we know so far, to me, I don't gut feel that it's terrorist. It sort of doesn't make so much sense. And if it was a botched one.
Well, depends what your definition of botched is.
Well,
It
no,
certainly wasn't clean and catastrophic.
Well,
at
it
the
wasn't
time.
over anywhere that was obvious. I mean, there were no TV cameras to watch
No.
wreckage coming down over a major city or
No.
anything like that.
No.
And if
Yeah.
it was shot down from the ground, they would have had to have been on a barge or a boat.
No, it wasn't shot down. I mean, I think someone will come up that it was the speculation's very, very dangerous, but getting a bomb onto a plane, heaven forbid, is
In Paris,
probably becoming increasingly difficult.
especially in Paris.
But if you wanted to disable a plane, it's quite easy to get batteries on a plane still. Laptop batteries, that type of thing.
Like melting them down, starting a fire.
Get a fire. Very hard to put out a lithium fire.
There was and we've seen that, there was a report on the Prune site on the night of the disappearance. Obviously a pilot came across as a pilot saying that there was, in the time they'd gone through, I think it was within the hour or two before or after this flight had gone through, there was a very strong jet stream running east to west,
Yeah.
90 degrees to their track pretty well,
Yeah.
at 110 knots. Now, if you've flown into that at night in an unsuspecting way, and sometimes the shear lines of those jet streams can be not a lot, put it that way.
Yeah.
A sudden huge change of direction of wind and strength. I'm just thinking back to when that BOAC 707 was knocked out of the sky around Mount Fuji. It actually snapped the back of the plane off, the turbulence. That could be something. If you got hit unsuspecting by that, what would the plane do?
Well, it's another one of these things, amazingly, they're not going to get the black box.
Yeah.
MH370. Hello. Geez, why do we bother?
What is it about these things?
Yeah. Well, it makes you start wondering, why don't they have real-time reporting?
Well, I think that's going to come.
Yeah.
Speaking of dodgy flights, dodgy places to land, you know about South Africa. What's this air service or this airport I've been talking about the last few days that we've got some footage on our YouTube of this. The only BA73 you'll see these days.
Yeah.
flying into.
Operated by Comair, a South African subsidiary. And they flew to the newly opened airport in St. Helena.
So where is St. Helena?
Really in the middle of nowhere, middle of the South Atlantic.
Really?
Yes.
What, 2-3 hour flight from SA?
Oh, yeah. It's a long way out.
Wow.
Next stop, Ascension Island. Next stop, Falkland Islands.
Okay.
And up until now, it hasn't had an airport. The only way to get there has been by boat. There's only a couple of thousand people live on the island, a bustling community by all accounts.
What do they do there? Is it like the Falklands? They've got sheep.
They fish and do stuff like that.
Oh, right.
And sell stamps to
Still stamps.
philatelists.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's the word. Yeah, and they decided they wanted an airport, and they built one. So, people talk about the Wellington runway extension as if it's a big deal. These guys have built an entire airport for one flight a week at this point.
Yeah. And it's not a bad looking airport.
It's a very
Looks
nice
like a
looking
real airport.
Like they leveled a hill and put an airport on it. Yeah.
And it looks like the weather conditions could be a little
Well, that's
tricky.
It's a windy landing, isn't it?
Yeah, you come all that way, and what would your alternate be?
Well, that's one of the problems. An alternate is either Cape Town or Ascension Island, which is a military airbase, and so not that easy to get into.
Okay, so I wonder what sort of restrictions are on the...
I think
Operation.
the plane is load limited because it has to have enough fuel to get back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is essentially pretty well all the way it's come. Okay, well, that proves it can be done. Well, they built that airport out of the Chatham Islands as well, And some nice pictures there. Now, on to Airbus. Before we talk about Boeing, Cathay are about to, in the week that we're making this program, launch their new business class seat in the A350. The first one is now in Hong Kong, and media will be going through it in the next few days. This is relevant because this is the aircraft that Cathay will be operating to New Zealand shortly, taking over, I think, from the A340, right?
Yeah.
300. Also, Airbus on the 17th of May rolled out the first A350 1000 with the triple bogey undercarriage. As soon as I saw that, Martin, I thought, watch out, 777. Watch out. It's coming at you.
Yeah, it is.
There it is, right there.
Yeah, it's going to be a big battle. Very interesting.
Yeah. Cathay is going to make a big deal out of that. We'll probably see quite a bit of advertising and marketing into the New Zealand market of that aircraft. I wonder who's going to be sitting back and watching that. Do you think our guys will be interested in how that A350 performs?
Well, you'd have to be, wouldn't you? I mean, it's the plane that hits all the numbers in terms of capacity right in the middle. Apparently it's, 20 tons lighter, uses less fuel. You'd have to be interested.
Yeah.
Because the only option Boeing are going to offer you now is the 777-8 and 9, which is, one's the same size as a 300 and the next one's bigger.
Hong Kong and Auckland will commence in the second half of the year, and other places for the A350 and Cathay service: Barcelona, Dusseldorf, Milan and Zurich coming up. 11 900s are due to be delivered this year. 42, Martin, of the 900s and the 1000s. So there you go.
It's going to be very impressive, isn't it?
In fact, that's going to be a core item of their fleet, those numbers.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And it's going to be the similar thing for Singapore, isn't it?
Exactly. So that bodes well for future competitive battles with Boeing. Speaking of Boeing, oh dear, talk about predictions coming true.
Well, yes, that is fascinating. There's a very interesting column written by a blogger.
Yeah.
He's a bit more than a blogger. His name is Leham.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
And he has a column called lehamnews.com, or a website. In 2005, wrote an article saying that Boeing had better watch out because Bombardier was on the way with a new C series, and
we've been talking about lately, big time.
Yeah, he was a little bit out on his timing, but he was absolutely bang on when he said, and this is some of the things he said way back then in 2005. Today, Bombardier is poised to move up on Boeing as Boeing did on Douglas and Airbus did on Boeing. And Airbus certainly understood the threat when, some years later, John Leahy said that Airbus is not going to ignore Bombardier in the C series, and actually were quite aggressive on pricing to shut that aeroplane out of the market.
Right.
Another thing he said in 2005 was that is an attitude that investment in its airliners is necessary to keep Boeing as a premier leader in commercial aviation, not a grudging make-do with derivatives of old, out-of-date airplanes. And at the time he was talking about the 757-300, the 767-400 and the 737-900.
So they were all in production at the time.
Yeah, and he's bang on with that too. Basically he says Boeing should have looked to the next quarter century of aviation and not the next financial quarter.
Well put.
But what's really interesting is some of the stuff that he's discovered about how Boeing reacted to the Bombardier. So obviously, as we know, when it came to United, Boeing just went in bargain basement and sold planes for $22 million a pop, which they knew Bombardier couldn't match.
Yeah.
Which
I would call predatory pricing.
Absolutely.
Even though they can get away with it illegally, it's still very predatory. Yeah.
And the big fear here for Boeing was that somebody would choose this airline and they'd find out how good it was, and Boeing obviously know how good it is, otherwise they wouldn't have been so frightened, because if it's a bad product, they'd have been able to
that happened with Delta.
So what happened is that Delta started looking for planes, and Boeing's response is really, really interesting. They knew Delta weren't interested in 737s. So their counter-offer was used 717s and Embraer E190s.
What at really dirt cheap price.
Really dirt cheap. Get them into Delta so that Delta would not order the Bombardier. And we know what happened there. They've gone ahead and ordered 75 and optioned 50 more. Now the big problem that Boeing has is more people are going to follow this because Delta's going to talk it up. And the real big worry for Boeing is that in 5 or 6 years, Bombardier announce a 180-seater, and maybe everyone's talking about the 757 replacement. Maybe Bombardier go ahead and make a 250-seater.
Yeah.
And that would scare Airbus as well. Now, Boeing's response to this is the only reason they've started developing the 737-7X, or the 7.5 MAX as people are calling it, is because the CS500, the Bombardier CS500, the bigger one, which they're already planning to build, is really, really frightening them. And now, in the last couple of days, Boeing have announced another derivative of a 50s or 60s product, which is the 10 MAX.
Yeah, which they're talking about having to change the undercarriage length, which we've talked about, which I think involves the whole wing box and that part of the plane. Also, they're talking about a specific version of that LEAP engine, the more powerful one.
A bigger one, yeah.
Which lacks a lot of commonality with the other one, so you miss that. How can anyone invest in a family of aircraft operation and include that one in it when you're comparing it to all the C-Series models that are coming in the current Airbus range? And if you're only going to buy that aircraft, well, it's sort of almost an orphaned type. It's not going to be a huge...
It'd be another 757.
It won't be in the big numbers.
Yeah.
And then Airbus, goes, well, okay, for the last 8 or 9 years we've been working on wing designs for the A321 to take it to, the next level. Plus you got that Russian thing coming.
MS-121. And as we know, the Russians, they've built that little Sukoi Superjet, and it looks like everybody who runs it loves it.
I see CityJet, is it the Irish carrier?
Irish.
Have got it now, so they'll be replacing their 146s. With those.
High time.
Yeah,
but there you go.
In fact, that's lasted remarkably long in some.
And if they can, if
the
Russians get that MS-121 halfway decent or as good as the Superjet, they probably won't win huge amounts of orders, but they're a player. Yeah. And the Superjet is demonstrating that they can still be players.
What if you can make an A321 stretch that gets another 30 or 40 passengers in it? That shuts off the top end. Gone. Boom.
Yeah. Boeing have got a...
You don't even need to change the wheels. You don't need to change anything, really, in terms of dimensionality, do you? Except the length.
Just the length, yep.
They're being backed into a corner.
They have been backed into a corner. Well, probably by constantly concentrating on short-term profit, they probably back themselves into that corner.
I would imagine that some of the old Boeing types, if there are any left, must have been going nuts because that's what got them ahead in the first place.
Exactly.
They were ripping it back in, when they brought out the 7.5 and the 7.6, man, they were...
Although, to be honest, the 767, they were kind of dragged kicking and screaming to that because the Airbus A300 was demonstrated the feasibility of a big twin.
They embraced the family idea.
They got it,
but they moved away from that again. It's sort of...
Well, they've stuck with a very old family and they just keep trying to tart it up.
Yeah, but everything's different. I mean, the 777 systems are different from the 737
Oh, yeah,
systems.
absolutely,
It's sort of all over the place.
Yeah.
It doesn't make much sense.
I see what you're saying, and whereas Airbus has a common theme from the A318 all the way up to the A380.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Where there are differences, they're more evolutionary differences. The concept is still basically the same.
However, what Airbus will face, when it's time to change that concept, it's going to be very difficult.
Well,
if they change it to that extent, I don't know.
What would you change it to?
Well, who knows?
Back to manual. Manual flight.
Manual, yeah.
And further delay with their biggest selling 767 model is the one they blimmin' well started with in the tanker version, and that's another delay?
Another delay. They're having troubles with the loading on the boom. So they were going to have them all delivered by August next year. Now they're going to start delivery by August next year, which was going to take 8 months. They're now only going to start when they should have finished. They're going to deliver them slightly quicker, but even then, all the planes delivered won't have the underwing refueling pods installed.
How could you get the boom wrong when you've been doing booms for 50 years?
How can you get anything wrong? This plane should have built itself.
Is it too light?
I don't know.
Is the boom too light?
Yeah, that's what you're hearing. The boom's too light. It's battling with some of the side loads. And all this
it's not as if they haven't had side loads on refueling booms before.
Yeah, it's just astounding, really.
Yeah, I don't get it.
And they've built a few 767 tankers for the Italian Air Force and for the Japanese Air Force and I think one or two others. And apparently they lost millions on every single one of them.
Oh, dear. But in the end, it's all good because the checks keep getting written. Or are they covering this? Does Boeing cover this?
Well,
who ends up paying?
The contract that they've got now is the Air Force weren't happy and they are fixed price contracts. So there you go. You get your $987 million.
Yeah.
And any money you lose, you have to cover. Of course, they're not going to lose any money.
Because it's built in.
It's all built in.
They should have gone with that A330.
Well, I think...
MRT or whatever they call it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they'll be happy that they didn't go with the Airbus and, string the customer along.
Well, the thing is, they'll be able to carry more fuel further.
Yeah.
Isn't that the mission?
Yeah.
Anyway, whatever. Referring back to what we've just been talking about, the A350 now emerging. Air New Zealand is being talked to by Airbus. The long-range version, that'd be the Singapore version, right?
Yep.
And the Airbus people are sort of talking up Auckland, New York. It's a possibility it has the range.
Yep.
They're saying they've got a great relationship through the A320, and they would really want, and it seemed to be quite emphasised in the statement from the representative for Airbus in this part of the world. He's saying that they'd really like to get Air New Zealand to fly one of these types. Not too far up to an A380 after that. We've talked about that already. But, that's a useful range. Auckland, New York, something like that could work.
That's
And it gets you all the way to the Middle East as well.
That's quite big news. And, Air New Zealand 777-200s are getting on a bit. In the next couple of years, they're going to have to start thinking about replacing. What do? Do they go and buy a bunch more 787-900s? Do they go to the 787-10, which doesn't appear to be that popular? What else is out there? As we discussed a little earlier in the program, The new 777s are big and bigger. There's no 200 equivalent anymore, really. The actual 100% 200 replacement is the A350, and then of course you've got the A350 regional, you've got the regular A350-900, and then you've got the LR, and you've got the 1000. They've got a great product range to cover exactly that 200 replacement.
I wouldn't be surprised if something happens there. I don't think Airbus would risk speaking that strongly, and so, because the other thing is you're sounding a bit desperate. You'd have to think you've got some ducks lined up there before you start talking like that, wouldn't you?
That's a prestige route, isn't it? You know, Auckland, New York. Wouldn't that be great?
It's great potential for New Zealand because you can lift people straight out of New York, take them all the way here, direct, and with great product.
Yeah.
So watch that space. In the meantime, get ready for its imminent arrival here. And is Qatar coming here when they come here with that machine, or are they doing the LR thing, the 777?
They're doing the 777 LR.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Korean Airlines engine blowout.
That was at Tokyo Haneda, the city airport in Tokyo.
Looks like it shot some engine stuff through the...
Yeah, well, lucky it happened on the taxi to take off.
Yeah.
So another few minutes could have been pretty dire.
Well, though it
should handle it.
Yeah, be the worst possible time.
Yeah.
Pratt powered one, isn't it?
Yes, a Pratt & Whitney 4090 or 4084.
That was the first model engine on the 777, wasn't it?
Yes, that was the first certified engine on the 777. It's an engine that goes way back, mid-80s.
Right.
Started on the A300, A310, 767, 747, all with varying fan sizes. And I mean,
right.
The one on the 777 is quite different from the early ones, but it's all the basic Pratt & Whitney 4000 with various thrust pumps.
Right.
Went all the way up to £99,000.
Man, that's a long product life. You keep finding this in this business, don't you?
Yeah.
Very long product lives, and it's still around in an incarnation at the moment.
Yeah. It's the Engine Alliance GP 7200 or something, isn't it? It's what's on the Emirates Airbuses.
The A380.
Yeah.
So it's still there.
Still hanging around.
So what range are they on the... I think they're over 70,000 on the A380,
I think it's the 72,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have to look that up, I suppose. Okay, and one of our aircraft of the day, month, week, whatever it is, recently was the Antonov 225 Mira. See, the Aussies got to experience the magic of the Mira in at Perth.
Yeah, landed
I didn't
in
quite
Perth.
read what it was in for.
No, neither did I, to be
some
honest.
impressive pictures.
I just watched the video of all those tyres smoking as they touched down on the runway. There was lots of smoke, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's big.
It's huge.
Yeah. I wish they'd build that other one, finish that other one.
Yeah, it's all sitting there in its green paint in the back of a hangar, isn't it?
Yeah, all good to go.
Well, more or less, yeah. There has been talk of if they modernise the AN124 fleet...
They will.
And put modern engines in it, that the second 225 could receive the same engines and the two-person cockpit and all of this type of thing.
That'd be cool.
You know, there's like photo tours of the A225 and the 124, that the avionics bay looks like a server room. It's like the computer room.
Yeah, with all this cooling stuff
Yeah,
going on.
and you like wander around in
Those
there.
fans everywhere.
Well, you know, where's the engineer? He's lost in the server room.
Yeah. You've got a little pipe you can speak to him through.
Yeah.
You ring the little telegraph.
Yeah, we blow the whistle.
Yeah. So that was nice that they got to see that. I don't know if it's ever been to here. I don't think it has. We've had AN124s into Auckland before, though. I filmed one once.
Yeah.
Bringing generators in when the power went off in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, the big cable broke and it was,
Flew in a few generators.
Yeah.
Well, where from? Aussie?
Don't know, wherever you could get them.
Bet the Aussies gave them a good deal. Huh, not.
Yeah, here's a go, mate. Okay, let's get on to our aircraft of the day, which is not an aircraft. It flies in the water. It's by Boeing. And you've been on one recently.
No, didn't go on one. Cruised next to one, wishing I was on one.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I misunderstood that.
Yeah.
I misheard. That's what it's called.
I was crossing on the Star Ferry, which is the $1 crossing of the main water thoroughfare in Hong Kong, wishing I could afford to go to Macau on a jet boat.
I used to have a book on Boeing, or probably still do out in the garage somewhere, and one of the sections of the book, of course it was all aeroplanes, but one of the sections did cover their hydrofoil craft. And now we're going back to the late 60s here, aren't we?
No, mid-70s. They had a military program which developed quite a few in the 60s. They wanted them for patrol boats and all of this in Vietnam. But this commercial one, the first one went up in 1975, and the last one was built in the late 90s, but not by Boeing. It was built by a Japanese or a Chinese crowd.
Okay, so do we know how many are out there?
Yes, they built 45, and I think 42 are still floating.
Well, that's all right.
Or flying.
Boy, they get along. So
47 knots.
How far?
47 knots.
That's over 50 miles an hour.
But I was watching one take off, for want of a better word.
Yep.
Man, a lot of energy goes into getting it up on those foils.
So they've got 2 jet engines on board.
2 Allison turbines.
And they, drive a gearbox and
water
shafts
and yep. I think they drive propellers on the bottom of the rear wings.
Right. And
Yeah.
that gets them...
And it gets them up.
And once they get up, of course, all the friction goes.
All the friction
and you
just disappears.
need a lot less thrust.
Yeah, I haven't managed to see a picture of one under the water, which is what I'm really interested in seeing.
That'd be a submarine.
But they get up quite high. They get up, they're probably 5-6 feet out of the water. And I was watching one power away from me, and it banked to go between 2 bridge piers, and it did bank quite markedly.
Well, I guess at that speed you'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and
otherwise they would get thrown over.
Yeah, and 47 knots, and they burn just over 2 tons of fuel an hour each engine.
Boy,
it's quite a lot of fuel.
What's the capacity then?
240 people.
That's not bad.
No, and it seems that they offer the it's like the premium service to Macau. From Hong Kong to Macau.
So that would take how long in one of those?
Well, the regular boat takes about 50 minutes, so this probably does it in less than half an hour.
So you could probably move, how much fuel? 2 tons an hour?
Yeah.
You could probably move, about 1,000 people, 700, 800 people in that time?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. They were most impressive. Not as loud as I was expecting, but certainly a lot of hot air coming out of the 2 exhausts on the back.
Sound like an aircraft, is it?
Not really. It is a slight turbine-y noise. It's quite well muffled.
So
but like I said, there's a big, not a jet blast, but there's a lot of hot air coming out the back.
So they sold well in Asia.
They seem to sell very well in Asia, yeah. Their initial contract was to sell them in Hawaii, but the Japanese and the Chinese really took to them. And I would say Macau Ferries or Hong Kong Ferries is probably one of the biggest operators. There's a lot of them.
Right. So what would they weigh?
The only reference I've seen to what they weigh says 30 tons, which I can't believe. That seems a bit light.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes. And to carry 240 people...
Though you never know. Maybe it's built like an aircraft, really light.
Maybe they are super light, yeah. I mean, they're funny little things when they're sitting in the water. They don't look seaworthy at all because they're very wide and quite short. And then what you think is a big anchor housing under the middle of the bow is actually the...
Do they fold out? Or are they just permanently out?
Well, I couldn't see. I suspect they can fold back.
Yeah.
Certainly the ones on the side look like they fold. But, it's really impressive. These things, they howl along.
Okay.
Boeing 929.
The 929.
Yeah, they even gave them a...
How long before they're up on the foil out of the dock? I suppose you need to get a fair way out first before you can really crank it.
They bring them back in on the foils quite close into the dock because, of course, once you reduce the power and the hull hits the water, they basically stop.
It's like the brake going on, huh?
But I think it takes them a while to get up because you just see, like clouds of hot air coming out the back of these jets, and it is making a bit of noise, and there's huge gouts of spray coming out the back, and then slowly it sort of goes faster and faster, then it just sort of pops out of the water, and then it just disappears.
I remember seeing film of the old flying boats. They'd spend a lot of time getting enough airspeed up to just get that...
get it on the step.
The hull bit out of the water. Once that suction was gone, no problem. It just lifted.
And it's the same thing. You see, it's really battling to overcome that drag, and then once it gets an inch out of the water, boom, it just takes off and it's gone.
I remember when the fast ferries were operating out of Wellington Port, there was the Top Cat, which was one of those big things made in Tasmania.
Tassie.
And that ended up with the US military. I think it's still with the military.
Yeah.
Did a bit of filming for them. I went for one of their trial trips on that before it went into scheduled service. We were doing 53 knots in the Marlborough Sounds in that thing. And you couldn't tell, but I looked out the window and we overtook a speedboat.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I realised that we're really honking.
We're motoring.
Yeah. And the speedboat was like trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And it was like a reasonable speedboat, like a big fat outboard on the back and everything. That was wave-piercing hull, not a foil thing.
They stopped making these... Well, they didn't make many. The main production kind of stopped in 85. The last 2 or 3 were made in the 90s, but you don't hear too much about jet foils anymore.
Probably if you can't get enough people moving, that sort of fuel capacity and the cost of operation probably...
Because most of the Hong Kong ferries now are those wave piercers.
All right. Well, yeah. I mean, if Boeing were following the way they do things, they would be just retrofitting them all and trying to keep them going for another 50 or 60 years, You can see they're thinking, look at the B-52.
Yeah.
It's still going.
Still going.
That,
No, in fact, the B-52 has outlived the replacement engines they were putting forward in the 90s and early 2000s, which was RB211s. Now, you can't buy an RB211 anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I saw a video of a guy who's got one who fires it up. He's got it in the backyard.
He's a Kiwi, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think I've seen that video.
It's in England.
Yeah, but I think he's a Kiwi.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a group of them. It might be a group of enthusiasts, but
And he's got this engine in a big frame in his yard, and he starts it up.
He's got a truck or one of those.
No, he's got a.
Things,
Yeah, he's got a. No, I think he's got a
power.
little sapphire engine out of a gnat or something that he uses to fire it up.
Puts the air through it. Yeah.
And you see that thing at Flight Isle and all the trees sort of 50 yards across the field that are leaning over.
Yeah, it's certainly got a presence about it.
Amazing.
So there you go. Imagine having one of those. Oh, Virgin 7.4 for sale for, I think it's 900k all up, and they'll transport it. There's our hotel idea right there.
Yeah. And it's got the seats and everything still in
Anyone
it.
want to do a crowdfunding exercise?
So you could give people that true airline experience. Here you go. It's 350 seats. Pick one. You're going to be really uncomfortable. We'll let you out in 11 hours.
Yeah, you
Shut
pay
the
for
doors.
privilege.
Suck half the air out.
No, but put those pods in.
Yeah, you could do that.
You do what they've done. I'll put some footage up now. That airport in Stockholm, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's Sweden, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's very popular. It's world famous.
Yes, it is.
And
It is.
this would be a 400, not a 200. I mean, it's
better class of aircraft.
more range.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not that expensive. It would be gutted. Everything would be out of it. Would they have the undercarriage still on?
Well, the only thing out of it...
You want to recover that,
The
wouldn't
only thing that's out of it are the engines. Everything is still in
No,
it.
apparently the avionics has been taken out.
Are they taking that out?
That's
But
what
the
I
whole
mean.
interior is still in it.
Oh, is it?
Lockers, seats, screens, everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're not taking them out. You can have them as well.
Well, you don't want them. Or you might want that for your little picture theatre down the back for all the people who stay in it.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I think the first thing that happens is somebody would just put the seats up on eBay for $1,000 a pop, because there's enough nutters out there who'd buy one. Me being one of them, probably.
It's $500,000 just on the seats.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind an aeroplane seat.
Especially like a business class or first class, one in your lounge.
Well, I saw that being advertised in Hong Kong. One of the casinos in Macau offers, basically they call it business class gambling, and it is basically a business class seat, aircraft seat that reclines, and where the screen comes out of the armrest, that's where you can do your gambling.
That's crazy.
It's got the cup holder, it's got the fold out table, and you can sit in this thing and gamble.
I don't know what I think about that. That's air of desperation
it brings immediately. Well, hang on. Once we're up in international airspace, why aren't the airlines offering onboard gambling? That'd be a good little earner.
There's a good point.
Hey, we're above the continental shelf. Who's up for a game of blackjack?
Yeah. Boy, I think you're onto something there. All right.
Because then the flight service manager on an Air New Zealand plane, or the guy who puts on the chef's uniform to serve you your TV dinner, he could then dress up as a croupier.
Come around with a mobile, wheel.
Well, it's a card scanner. The first thing you come around is a card scanner.
Yeah, well, all you need is a touch screen. You don't want to muck around with anything physical, right?
Yeah, that's it. Hey,
I mean, just be like one of those one-arm bandit things, but on the screen.
you could have all sorts of things. Will we be on time? Will we have turbulence?
A whole lot of things.
Anything.
And then the captain can delay us so the house wins.
Yeah, well, the house will win. Don't you worry about that.
All right, so it's been a busy time, and we'll be back again shortly to talk more aviation. In the meantime, you've got Paul Brennan here in Wellington.
And Modern Noakes in Wellington as well.
See you around.
Cheers.